Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Mega Man 2, part of the Rockman Complete Works collection for the PlayStation 1, brought to us by Capcom. This is obviously the second release in the Rockman Complete Works collection, which was released in 1999 in Japan. It unfortunately never made it over to North America, but what it did was re-release Mega Man's 1 through 6 as individual titles for the PlayStation 1, though there was later a compilation that included all of them together. There are two different modes to the main game here, and I'll be playing the original standard Rockman 2 or Mega Man 2, well, in this case the Japanese version of it, which the only real major difference between it and the North American version was the exclusion of multiple difficulties. There was only the one default difficulty. The other version of the main game is the Navi Mode, which adds a little bit of difference as far as the way the health and energy bars look for you and the bosses, changing it to look more like Mega Man 8's, as well as you have these little navigation and hint things that pop up throughout the course of the game that were supposed to, of course, guide you or help you a little bit as far as the game was concerned, which don't really add anything to the overall game. So, for the most part, I prefer just playing the original classic versions of Mega Man's 1 through 6. After, of course, the iconic intro of going up the building, we get to see Rockman, Mega Man at the very top of it, and then we get to jump into the game itself. Unlike the original Mega Man, which only had 6 Robot Masters, of course, Rockman 2 introduced 8 Robot Masters, and many consider Mega Man 2 the best the series ever saw. While there have been, of course, arguments and discussions, and as years have gone on, I've seen a great debate and change as far as what is considered the best Mega Man of the classic series, with many going still with 2, some going with 3, and I've heard a lot of people recently referring to 5 as one of the better ones, or at least the most underrated one. My personal favorites have always been 2, 4, and 6 of the classic set, mostly with 6 being because of the Robot Masters included, and I feel one of the best soundtracks the series ever saw. For this run of the game, I'll be completing them in the order I always have, and there's a couple of different orders that people have for the bosses. Some like to start with Bubbleman and go from there. For me, I always like to start with Flashman and thus end with Heatman, going in order of weakness to Robot Master. In Flashman's level, we of course start off by heading off the top part, and when we drop down here, we watch out for the giant machine trying to get the jump over our head. We then have a series of maze-like areas that we're going to be falling through. I try to do my best to avoid getting hit, though it is difficult to do so. When dropping down here, we're going to hug the left wall so we land on these platforms and can easily jump over the big robot, but then drop down right to this spot. You don't have to drop here, of course, but if you're able to time the jumps correctly on the slippery floor, you're able to get to a platform on the right here that has one of the energy tanks introduced here in Mega Man 2. The energy tanks, at any point if you want to use one, will completely replenish your current health bar. As the game would progress and we would get later entries in the series, more versions of the energy tank were introduced that would replenish our weapon, or replenish all the weapons, or replenish everything together. Here we enter the boss chamber for Flashman himself, one of the only bosses in Mega Man 2 that has a non-leveled playing field for you to face him with. He only moves really slowly, he has very small jumps, and after kind of going back and forth just a little bit, he will eventually stop and use his flash stopper here in order to freeze us in place and try to blast us with his blaster. Trying to stay in the air or close to him in the air when he ends up doing this, this will allow us to avoid getting shot by him, but you're also going to have to want to avoid him himself. Sometimes he can kind of get stuck on you and really home in on you, so you have to really kind of move away, far away, so that you can get enough space between you and him in order to deliver hits with the Mega Buster. Once Flashman is taken care of course, we're going to get his ability, but we also, in this game, get introduced to Dr. Light's special abilities. These are extra things that will help us platform in the game. We saw this a little bit with Mega Man 1 when we ended up getting the Magnet Beam ability for platforming, but they introduced not 1, but 3 of these moves here with Mega Man 2. Basically works kind of like a pseudo-rush abilities that we would start to see in Mega Man 3 upwards. The second Robot Master we're going to tangle with, though, is Quickman. Now, Quickman's level is infamous because of how difficult it is. Now, we do have Flashman's ability to stop all of the beams flying off from the left and right sides, as we're about to see them here. But the goal here is, of course, to move quickly and try not to get hit. Of course, if you get hit, it's an instant death, with the only exceptions being if you're on a field that has a different enemy. You can get hit by, like, that enemy right there on that screen, and this will allow you to bypass the lasers as they're coming in from the left and right sides. After a pretty intense area, which we're going to stop on the right side in order to grab another one of the energy tanks, we're going to drop down here where we have to deal with these giant flame robots, hitting them with multiple shots with our Mega Buster in order to take them out. And it's a little bit, of course, hard to see when you do take them out, but if you're running and you don't feel like you're making any progress, just do a jump and you should be able to keep making that progress. Right after that, though, we have the second set of beams. We're going to land on this platform here just for a second, and this allows us to then hit left and easily get to the platform. It's difficult and very challenging, and of course, will probably take several attempts. If you're not familiar somehow with Mega Man 2 and never played it before, I guarantee this spot will probably trip you up at least once or twice before you start getting the hang of how to outrun the beams. It's very intense and caused lots of stress in my youth, that is for sure. Once we're finally able to get past that part there, we have one more set of the giant robot machines here. I'm going to get hit by one of their shots and go through him that way. The individual bullets from these machines only end up doing a small bit of damage, so if you get hit by them, just run through it because you won't get hurt that bad. Running into the machine itself will cause significantly more damage. Now, Quickman's weakness is Flashman's, as to be expected. The thing is, though, it doesn't do very much damage to him, but we will use it here. For example, here we go. You'll see that your ability for Flashman drains a lot faster than Quickman's health, and as soon as that's gone, we want to immediately switch over to the Mega Buster and now use this to take out Quickman. He's very sporadic. Obviously, he's fast, he throws out the quick boomerangs, and our goal is to try to keep enough distance between us and him in order to deliver a few shots here and there. Sometimes he'll just run into a wall aimlessly for a while before he finally decides to jump and try to attack you, and these are usually your best bets in order to deliver a couple of hits before having to kind of back away or get to the opposite side of the room. Once you're able to take down Quickman, though, we of course get his ability, and then we're moving on to the next Robot Master, which in this case is going to be Metalman. Metalman is arguably the most OP Robot Master in all of Mega Man. His ability is ridiculously powerful. It ends up being the weakness for not only one of the other Robot Masters. Like many moves, it only works on one Robot Master, but with Metalman, it works on several Robot Masters and even works on several of the bosses during Dr. Wily's castle. It also has great trajectory where you're able to stand still and aim in diagonal patterns with Metalman's ability. And also Metalman himself is weak against his own move, which is, I think, the only time that happens in the Mega Man franchise, which I will showcase when we make it to the rematch against Metalman at the end of the game in Dr. Wily's castle. I've always had a issue with these drill-like enemies that pop out of the floors and ceilings as you're trying to run through. A lot of times I just take a hit or two and just try to keep on moving as quick as I can. When you make it out the other side, be careful to make sure you're able to make this jump. Not really a difficult one, but of course with the conveyor belts pushing and pulling, you have to be a little bit cautious. When we drop down to the segment down here, we now get introduced to the giant gear enemies. Basically, they hop around on a gear, and you can either take them out or take out the gear. If you just take them out, the gear keeps rolling, of course. So your goal really is to take out the gear in order to send them up into the air for you to easily take them out, or just let them fall off screen. And either way, you can then continue on without having to worry about getting hit. Here, with these big can guys, it takes several shots to take out. When you shoot one, they break apart. Now, your goal really is to kind of hit one and then stand in a position so that you don't end up getting hit by him when he breaks apart, but a lot of times I just say screw it and end up getting hit and continue to run on through it. Here we make it now to the Dr. Wily door and into the next Robot Master boss fight. For Metalman, while we have Quickman's ability, which is his weakness, the Mega Buster actually works surprisingly well. Metalman is one of my favorite fights because I've always been pretty good at being able to dodge out of his metal blades. If you stay on one side of the room, he'll never jump across to the opposite side. He'll only move across the room if you get close enough to him. Sometimes with the conveyor belt, especially if it's pushing you towards the wall, this actually works out well as you're able to deliver a couple of hits and easily dodge between his metal blades. It does take some practice to get used to the patterns and the way he throws out the blades, but after just a little bit of practice, you should be able to take down Metalman, and we're moving on to the next Robot Master. With Metalman's ability, we're going to jump on into Woodman's level. Easily one of my favorite Robot Masters of the game. Probably my favorite. I just always liked his design. It's like a tree trunk and all that stuff. I don't know. For some reason, I've always liked Woodman. I also always liked his level. Cool graphic design. Yes, it maybe just be a forest level. We'll see many of these forest kind of Mega Man levels as time would go on, but for whatever reason, I've always enjoyed the stage. When we drop on down here, we're going to take on one of the giant robots, watching out for the arcing flame shot that he ends up doing. Using Metalman's ability really ends up helping. This does a little bit more damage. Of course, you can just use the normal Mega Buster. If you get in a nice position here, you can get like right underneath of them, or you can kind of hit them like this. After just a few blades, it's done. And for the third one, you can actually stand here on the far left side and just keep doing little short jumps in order to just barely clip him with one of the metal blades. Yeah, it'll take a little bit longer, but this way you don't end up getting hit. We're going to keep Metalman's ability equipped as we continue on through the level, as it pretty much wipes out all the enemies throughout the course of Woodman's level. After making it to the top here and head to the right, we're going to take out the apes that try to jump up and grab onto the branch. If you don't get too close, they won't jump up, so you can kind of hit them with the diagonal shots from the metal blade in order to kill them before you even have to worry about them. There is, of course, also the birds dropping the eggs, one of the hardest and most annoying enemies in all of Mega Man 2, just because they're in several levels, and if one of those eggs end up hatching with all the little tiny birds going everywhere, it can be hard to dodge them always. Take out another one of the rabbit robots before heading on down to the next ladder, and then you have another one to deal with here. Easy to jump over their carrot maneuver, and then as we make it to the very bottom here, we have the chickens that run. If you move away from them and then just move forward again, so quick, opposite direction, and then you can continue moving forward, they'll jump over your head easily. Here we go with the battle against Woodman. He's going to, of course, use his leaf shield to try to hit us. The leaf shield goes around him, protecting him from us being able to hit him, and then he'll throw it at us, and then a series of leaves will rain down from the sky. Your goal is to try to get in between the leaves if possible, though I don't do a very good job during this boss this time around, but I'm able to deliver enough metal blades pretty quickly in order to drop him, and we get to move on to the next Robot Master. Next up is Airman, another one of the popular levels, just really iconic because of course, the giant robots here. Usually when Mega Man 2 gets screenshotted and, talked about or shown in art, Airman's level seems to be a very popular one to kind of showcase. I loved the not only blue color scheme, of course, with the sky, but the clouds in the foreground that end up blocking the platforms, making them a little bit difficult to see. But normally you can kind of get just enough of them in order to see where you need to jump to next. Here we have the ones that kind of go around one another, but we're going to turn around quickly and then wait just a moment in order for the cloud to pop on out so that we can then continue jumping over. When we make it to this platform here, you have the birds that are going to drop those eggs again. If you just time it just right, you can take out the eggs before they end up even moving away from the bird itself, which is the best outcome possible. But if you do end up having the egg hatch, usually just take the hit from one of the little small birds and just let it dissipate. It's going to be really hard to try to take them all out. You can use Metal Blade, though, to help you if you want to with those birds. During the last segment here, we have more of the birds flying overhead with more eggs. You also have the big, giant, tubby fan guys that try to push you away from them. Take several hits in order to take care of them. You have to be careful that you don't stop moving towards them, so that way they don't end up pushing you. But I've never had any problems with them. I don't know if they've ever ended up somehow pushing me enough to knock me off of a platform. At the end, though, of course, we're jumping into the boss fight here. We're going to be using Woodman's ability to Leaf Shield works well against Airman, though it can be difficult to hit him because of the tornadoes that he throws out. You have to time it just right. If one of the tornadoes is in the way, the Leaf Shield's just going to bounce off of it. So you have a couple of choices, either getting really close to him, so that even though he's using the tornadoes, you're going to get hit, but you can just hit him over and over again with the Leaf Shield, or you have to hit him during those brief opportunity moments when he's jumping from the right side to the left side. The patterns of the tornadoes are completely random, so sometimes it's really hard to get in between him, making Airman a relatively tough fight if you're facing him without any of the special abilities. Next up, we're going to be battling Clashman, or in some versions or some games known as Crashman. But either way, when we start the level, we're going to head up the ladder right away. Watch out for these guys. Usually I just jump over to the platform, end up getting hit, and then just continue along my way just because they end up doing just a tiny smidge of damage. It can actually be difficult to get around them just because of how quickly they end up spawning. When you make it up here, watch out for the Metools, firing the shots nicely timed so you can take them out before they end up even getting a shot off at you. Heading up this ladder, we're going to wait for this platform to kind of move its way around, taking out the robots along the way, and eventually we can reach that ladder. Now, if you have the number 1 ability from Dr. Light, you can use that, of course, to get up a little bit quicker, but since we don't have that in our arsenal at the moment, we have to take the long way around this set of platforms. Here we have the third and final one of this set. I'm going to pick up an extra bit of health just because luckily they ended up dropping them. If you're looking for some extra lives, these guys do sometimes end up dropping them, so you could take out a bunch of them and hope to either get that or at least replenish your health or item or whatever you want to. When we get over to here, thankfully we can just reach the ladder with nicely timed jumps, so we're able to get to the top a little bit without having to wait too long. Here we have another one of those canister robots that we end up shooting and breaking apart, and after him we're going to head up this ladder here. I'm going to go up quickly, as you don't have really anything to worry about coming at you yet. As we make it to this part here, you have to watch out for this Metool, that if it hits you and you fall down, you'll go all the way back to the bottom and have to climb all the way up these ladders. Now, when you make it to these 2 ladders here, you can go one of 2 ways. If you have that number 1 ability, you can take the left one all the way, and this will eventually lead to an energy tank. If you don't have that ability, though, head up the right ladder. When you make it to this set, head to the second ladder on the right, the one farthest to the right, and then climb up that. If you take the one next to it, you will lead to a little bit of a health boost right there. But you may risk, of course, getting hit, and since I have plenty of health, I should be okay as I continue to head up this ladder. Here you'll see where the energy tank is located, so if you want to drop on down, you could still grab it, of course, but you'll have to go all the way around that whole area again in order to get back up, unless you have that ability. Watching out for a couple robots here, we're going to head into this room and take on Clashman. Airman's ability is going to be our best friend for taking this guy out. He reacts to your shots. So every time you end up shooting, whether it be with the Mega Buster or Airman's move, he'll jump in the air. And you can manipulate him with this easily in order to take him out with the Mega Buster and watch out for his bombs. Or, with Airman's ability, only 3 of them, and he goes down. Next up is Bubbleman, a level that I know some people like to start with, because Bubbleman is one of the easier robot masters in the game to take out with the Mega Buster. As we begin the level, we have the robot frogs. They're going to shoot at little tiny frogs. They're going to hop around. The timing on them is pretty concise, so you know exactly when they're getting ready to jump, and you can either just let them hit you for that little bit of damage, or you can time your shots so you can hit them as they're jumping up. Of course, something like Metal Blade, once again, can help you take them out a little bit easier because it has a bigger shot radius. After dropping on down, we watch out for the shell-covered enemies before dropping down into the water below, where we have some more of them here. Firing at their shell will knock it off, and they'll continue moving, but this allows us to kind of jump over them and continue on. Now here you can take on the giant fish robot by taking out, of course, the thing on the top, or a lot of times I'll just end up getting hit and just continue running through, as the invulnerability time gives me enough in order to get on all the way to the other side of him. Here you have to be very, very careful with your jumps. You also don't want to walk too fast off of ledges, because you can walk into the spikes, which are instant death, of course. So you want to make sure that you avoid that. Here we have another one of the giant fish enemies that we're just going to kind of go right on through, and then make it over to this side. Waiting for us is another one of the frogs. After a couple more frogs, we then pop out of the water, where we have crabs that start to rain down through the waterfall. Speeding on through this area a little bit, you can avoid most of them before we end up hitting the Dr. Wily door and get ready to battle Bubbleman. Now for Bubbleman's battle, I'm going to use Metalman's ability, as he's one of the robot masters that's also weak against it, and this will greatly help us take him out pretty quickly. Bubbleman jumps back and forth, like usually in a diagonal jump, firing little shots all the time. He'll also stop and throw bubbles out that will start bouncing along the screen at you. After only a handful of metal blades, though, he's done, and now we're moving on to the 8th and final robot master for this run. Heatman's one of the arguably tougher robot masters, and he also has a really cool design because he is the fire robot master for this game. He's actually in the shape of a lighter, which I always thought was pretty cool. At the beginning of the level, you have these guys we've seen a couple of times in the game thus far. The biggest thing is you just want to make sure you don't end up landing in the lava flowing below, as of course this is instant death. Though if you get hit by one of the other robots, that invulnerability time can save you a little bit, as if you get knocked into it in this game, while you're still invulnerable, you can get out quickly, unlike Mega Man 1, where you were dead as soon as you ended up hitting an instant death spot. Watch out for these guys here, as we're going to make our way to the ladder on the far right. Heading on down here, we have the instance of disappearing, reappearing blocks. First segment's pretty easy to take care of them, and then they have another one coming out that we're just going to skip using one of Dr. Light's abilities. I've always used the skip, as I find it a ton, of course, easier than dealing with it, because the disappearing, reappearing blocks are still my least favorite part of classic Mega Man games, that is for sure. All during this part, though, you have to wait for the timing so you can jump on these blocks. If you mistime it, you can get pushed down into the pit, so you always have to keep that in mind and time your jumps accordingly so that you don't end up falling down into it. Over here, this is where the disappearing blocks will lead you slowly across the lava, and it's not as tough as it could be, but just to make sure I get through, of course, we're going to use this ability here, and this will rocket propel us all the way over to the far right side. Once we make it over here, heading on down the ladder, watching out for one of the giant mech guys, and try to get underneath of them if possible. If you are going to get hit, just keep on going through and climb down the ladder, get to wherever you need to go so you don't end up getting hit multiple times. And now for Heatman, we're going to use, of course, Bubbleman's ability to take him out. Heatman basically will only dash across the screen and charge up when you end up hitting him. So when you deliver a hit, he ends up kind of closing up and charging up, and then he flies across the screen. The timing on his fly, though, is sporadic, so making sure that you're able to jump over it sometimes can be difficult because it may come quickly, it may come a long time afterwards. He also throws out a 3-shot spread shot of fire that arcs up into the air and then lands and causes little fire towers that you also have to be worrying about and trying to avoid. If you time it perfectly, you can stop him from even firing out those little projectiles if you're able to get him in a nice little loop of hitting him and then immediately making him do the charge move, which can be a little bit difficult. Now that all the robot masters are taken care of, though, it's time to move on to Dr. Wily's castle. Here we go with Dr. Wily Level number 1, of course one of the most iconic Mega Man songs of all time. Dr. Wily's castle theme, levels 1 and 2, is just phenomenal. Easily one of the best 8-bit songs. Maybe a little bit overhyped nowadays because it was so beloved for so many years, so in today's nostalgic retro culture, whatever you want to call it, maybe a little bit overhyped, but still a fantastic song. Here in this level, we're going to be using the third Dr. Light ability to get our way up the first wall, and then I'm just going to get hit a few times, that way I don't even have to worry about changing my weapon up in order to use it again here. Keep it equipped and run over to the right wall here and use it again in order to hit this ladder. Make sure that you have plenty of item number 1 from Dr. Light. If for some reason you've used it, make sure you grab that item replenishment right there because you will need it in order to get up the next area once we get past this Sniper Joe guy. When you make it up here, climb up this ladder, and on the next platform you're going to have to use the number 1 ability from Dr. Light to create a series of platforms so you can reach the ladder. Start off by making the first one while standing on top of the ladder. Don't jump and use it, or else you may not have enough headroom in order to actually get to the ladder. If you end up falling, of course, you'll have to climb back up and try again. If you run out of ability, you'll have to either travel down or do whatever you need to in order to try to get some item replenishment. When you make it to the top here, though, we have a series of platforms you have to quickly jump on. Don't go too fast, though, overall, because eventually it slows up a bit as you have more platforms coming in as the giant mecha dragon appears. So you can actually go too fast, possibly during this, so take your time just a tad. When you get to a series of 3 blocks together, you know you're at the end. Pull out Quickman's Quick Boomerang and use this to take out the giant fire-breathing mecha dragon. Easily one of the coolest sprites in this game, for sure. You can deliver a lot of quick boomerangs really fast in order to take care of his health bar, watching out for the fire. The worst thing is, every time he shoots out fire, do your best to dodge it because you never know if the knockback damage is going to cause you to fall into a pit. I guarantee most lives lost during that fight is because you got hit by fire and you end up getting knocked back into a pit. Once he's taken care of, though, we get to see the map and move on to Dr. Wily Level 2. Not nearly as cool of a level, though at least it still has that awesome music going on. Watching out for a bunch of these guys to start it off, and then we're going to pull out Dr. Light's ability 2 here, this item, and thankfully there's item replenishment in case you have used it. But we're going to refill our item 3 since we used that in the last one, and you're just going to ride this all the way across. You can jump up the first ladder if you want to, but then you're going to have to use the Clashman ability on those walls there, and we're going to need Clashman's ability later on, so best not to use it now. Here I'm going to pick up all the little item replenishments, though, to power up or get some of the item back, though I'm not really going to be using it again. And then when you drop down here, be very careful, hug the right button on the D-pad so that way you land safely either in the pit down to this part, or you land at least on that edge of that platform so you can make it through here. Now I'm going to use Metalman's ability during the course of this part here to try to take out some of these drills. I'll get some item replenishment, some health and the like. Eventually just running through and getting to the end, but don't go too fast. You don't want to end up getting hit by these crushers, which do significant damage to you. They do a lot of damage. Then use item 3 in order to then get up this wall, watching out once again for another crusher waiting for you at the top. You can get in between these two here if you time it just right, so you're right in between so they don't end up hitting you. Then continue over and then drop on down this ladder. You'll land safely on this platform here and go to the left in order to get through the opening, and then hit right on the D-pad in order to fall down here, where we now have to face off with this multi-robot battle. Use Metalman's ability in order to hit the robot. It takes 3 of your metal blades in order to take one out. They do a lot of damage if they hit you though, so that's the key, is kind of knowing where they're going to come out so that you're able to avoid getting hit. Thankfully, Metal Blade can throw in that diagonal direction, which really ends up aiding being able to take these guys out. Not an extremely difficult fight as long as you have that Metal Blade available to you, and they get faster as you go. The problem is though, since they do a lot of damage, if you have an E-Tank, have that ready. You don't want to have to redo this fight. Once you've destroyed the last one though, of course, we're moving on to Dr. Wily Level 3. As this level begins, we're going to start off by dropping on down, of course. There are some items if you want to pick it up, but you have to use Clashman's ability, which we don't want to use. But there is plenty of item replenishment though to make sure you have a full set of it, as you will need it in Dr. Wily Level 4. Then underneath the water here, watch out for the giant fish robots. The nice little time jump will easily allow you to get over the one and then over here, but you do have to avoid the spikes. Here you fall through a couple of screens. You just want to be very light with the D-pad. Don't hit it too hard or else you'll probably careen yourself right into spikes and end up losing a life. Here I land safely, making sure I'm past the spikes before dropping down, hugging the right side here though, so I avoid the last set of spikes before popping out the water and having to deal with a series of these robot guys here before hitting the door. Now the boss battle for this level is the giant Gutsman tank. For whatever reason, Dr. Wily's always been obsessed with Gutsman. Seems to be his favorite robot, as there are a lot of Gutsman machines throughout the course of classic Mega Man. And we're going to be using Quickman's Quick Boomerang to take it out. Firing at the jaw area. When he lifts the giant fist, he'll shoot out a Matul, as well as he's firing little arcing shots out at you. If you time your jumps right, like jumping to the left a little bit and then hitting right, you can avoid those arcing shots and land safely back on the tank. Once he's done though, we're moving on to Dr. Wily Stage 4, arguably one of the worst of the Dr. Wily levels, mostly for the boss, in the history of Mega Man. As the level begins, you have item replenishment. Make sure that you fill up your Clashman ability if you have for some reason used it at all at this point. Thankfully they do give you those so you can replenish it, because you need a full set of it in order to finish up the boss. After watching out for this Matul here, climb up the next ladder, and you can use Dr. Light's ability number 2, the jet-propelled thing, in order to get past this part here to be safe with it, or you can just time your jumps just right, enough space between them to land safely, because the floor ends up having holes in it that you can fall through, and the same goes here. So if you have any left, you may want to use it here just to be safe. I've done it several times over the years, so I'm just going to risk it and go. There's an E-Tank here. I'm not going to be trying to get it. There are more holes located in the platform, but if you do want to grab another energy tank, you can do so there. Once you get over to the right, dropping down the ladder, you're going to land on a platform down right here, and work your way over to the ladder on the left. If you end up getting hit by one of the enemies, or if you want to make a little bit of a shortcut, you can get hit by one of them and get to the platform while you're still invulnerable. Here you don't have that option. You have to ride this along in order to jump up this platform and wait for it to come back around and then you can climb on up. When you are right here, wait for a little while for the platform to finally make its sweet way over, and you can drop on down to it, take out a couple of enemies here, and then you can jump on over. Once you kind of come all the way around, you can jump to that small little ledge, and then use this to kind of get over. And then here I'm just going to drop on down, get hit by an enemy, and then make it down to this spot here. Once again, wait for this platform to come around, wait for it on the platform here, or I'm just going to use item number 2 to help me get up by a little bit quicker. Now, you drop on down, you have a series of 2 giant machines and 2 Sniper Joes in between, which gets a little bit annoying because you want to have as much health possible, of course, going into the upcoming boss fight, which is the worst boss fight in all of classic Mega Man. I absolutely hate this fight so much. For it, you have to use Clash Man's Clash Bomb ability, and you have a very specific amount. So we're going to start off by using the number 1 ability to climb up to this platform here, and then switch over to Clash Man's ability and fire at the wall to the left. Once that blows up, we're going to fire another one, and then we're going to jump up to this little alcove here, taking out the next one, not destroying the wall there, and then jump up, taking out this one. And then you want to drop on down, taking out the one down here, and once that's done, use the number 3 ability in order to climb back up, and then you should have just enough Clash Bomb left in order to blow up this wall and take out the one in the lower right. If you miss a single Clash Bomb, you don't time it just right, you will end up having to, well, just let him kill you and start the level over again and replenish that Clash Bomb, making this the most annoying, worst boss fight in the game. Once that debacle is over with, though, we're moving on to what would become a staple of the classic Mega Man games, and that is the Boss Rush Chamber. Here you have all the little entry points for all the different Robot Master boss fights. Pick whichever one you want to start with, and you have to defeat all of the Robot Masters again. We're going to be doing the same pretty much strategies as we did before, using Metalman's ability here to take out Woodman, get up real close to him and hit him a few times. Even though we end up taking some damage, thankfully everyone you defeat drops a giant health container, and because of this you can replenish most, if not all, of your health you're probably going to end up losing during the course of these fights. Next up is Bubbleman. We're going to keep Metalman's ability equipped here and battle him, taking him out, jumping into the air, or in the water this time around, in order to get high enough and just keep hitting him. After just a handful of blades, he's done, and we're moving right into that next fight. Here we end up battling Quickman, which we can't use Metalman's ability for, so we're going to switch off to Flashman's ability and use that first, even though it really isn't all that effective. And once that wears out, then of course go back to just normal Mega Buster and finish him off that way. A little bit easier to hit him in this fight because he doesn't have the little other platforms that he can kind of bounce on or use them, so just keep attacking him with the Mega Buster, and after just a few hits more after the Flash is done, he'll be done. And we're moving on now to Clash Man. Once again, very easy, manipulating him with Airman's ability, hitting him in midair or making him jump with it. And once he's done, grabbing that extra bit of health, and go to the chamber right above, which ends up being the rematch here against Metalman. And here's what's really fun. Use Metalman's ability against Metalman. Look how much damage this does. One hit is half his health, the second one defeats him, and that's it. It's amazing that that ends up working as well as it does, and just one of those oddities, I guess, overall, as far as Robot Master abilities go. Next up is Flashman, which we're going to use Metalman's ability once again. Flashman's a joke when it comes to using the ability. With the last 2 that we have left, starting off in the upper left here with Heatman, of course getting out Bubbleman's Bubbleman ability in order to take him down with that, trying to watch out when he does the big dash across the screen, because the timing is always sporadic and can be a bit difficult. Like I said, if you time it just right, you can stop him from even firing out his other move, but it has to be perfect timing. Now, last but not least, is the rematch against Airman, and we're going to use Leaf Shield from Woodman in order to do this, getting up really close and using a bunch of it in order to hit him. Now, unfortunately, what happens here is I defeat him, but I'm not able to grab the health, and this puts me at a disadvantage going into the Wily fight, so I end up having to use an energy tank during this battle. For the first form, you want to use Heatman's ability. What you need to do, though, is charge it all the way up. Do a full charge, you have to hold it down, and then unleash it. It only takes a couple if you do this. Once the first form is done, though, we move on to the second one, where we're going to use Metalman's ability. Staying on the ground and then firing it up at him. Trying to watch out for the projectiles that bounce around, though, is pretty difficult. I've always had trouble dodging them. Once I get down to low health, though, I'm going to use one of the E-tanks here. If I had actually grabbed that health during the Airman fight, I wouldn't have needed to use the E-tank, but that's unfortunately what ended up happening. Once Dr. Wily is defeated here, though, we're moving on to the final level of the game. It's really just kind of a giant hallway, but this leads to that final boss encounter. For this level, we start off by dropping down a couple of levels into kind of a cave-like area, and you have lava dripping from the ceiling. A large portion of the lava you can just kind of run past. You don't want to get hit at all, so be a little bit cautious during this. Like right here, I'm going to wait for it to drip, as I wouldn't have been able to outrun it. But this way I have my full health bar going into the final encounter here, which is against the alien, the weird Dr. Wily alien. And we're going to use, of course, Bubbleman's ability, which is what you have to use in order to take it out. For the alien fight, he has a very specific pattern that he takes. It's kind of like a figure 8 type of thing that he likes to do. He kind of comes around, goes up the center, down the left wall, then up the center again, then down the right wall, and then rinse and repeat. Every second or two, he ends up firing out a single projectile out at you. Try to dodge as many of these as possible while delivering the bubbles. You can hit with multiple bubbles if you're able to get them out quick enough, as there's no invulnerability time for him during this fight. Just keep dodging the single shots, delivering those bubbles, and once he is taken care of, you can sit back and enjoy the ending to Mega Man 2 on the PlayStation 1. So there you have it, Mega Man 2, the PlayStation 1 version, or Rockman 2, known as part of the Rockman Complete Works collection. Overall, like I've said at the beginning, this is considered one of, if not the best, of the classic Mega Mans. It's for many people is their personal favorite. Also, for many out there, this was the first one they played. Mega Man 1, of course, while it's the original, isn't quite as popular as Mega Man 2, didn't sell as much, or wasn't as readily available as Mega Man 2 ended up becoming. I am one of the many that played Mega Man 2 over playing the original one first. In fact, I borrowed it from a friend down the street from me. I'd never even heard of Mega Man at that point, but I was still pretty young. But that immediately introduced me to the world of Mega Man, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. Found out Mega Man 4 over at another cousin's house. I played that one over there and loved it, and then basically started to piece together my Mega Man collection, with Mega Man 6 being one of the last, of course, NES games that I ended up having, because, of course, that was one of the last ones that ended up coming out. So it was like, at the end of the NES life, I ended up getting my copies of Mega Man 6, Star Tropics 2, and Wario's Woods. Wario's Woods probably my least favorite of those, but even though Star Tropics has its flaws, Mega Man 6 may not have innovated that much. Still personal favorites of mine, and I will always end up loving those. But Mega Man 2 is where many people got their starts, and it's arguably the most iconic in a lot of ways. We didn't get the charged up Mega Buster that we ended up getting later on. We wouldn't get the slide ability quite yet, and stuff wouldn't be quite as formulaic as we would end up getting with the series, but still fantastic game. After we get to the presented by Capcom screen here, you can press the start button, and then you'll have a congratulations screen. There's also a hard mode that ends up unlocking if you want to play through that, making things even tougher to play through. And I'm also, real quick though, before we finish up the play it through, head over to the gallery here, which is really cool. Probably one of the coolest features of the whole Rockman Complete Works collection here. You get all the artwork, the official artwork, and then you get little bios or little information on each of the enemies and characters in the game. Some of them don't have the stuff, as you'll notice throughout the course here, as you have to actually like unlock it. I'm not sure exactly if it had to mean by defeating enemies or whatever it was to unlock it. It may actually have to do also with completing the game either on hard or more specifically maybe on Navi Mode. But while scrolling through, you get to see each one of the enemies, and ends up being really kind of a cool little extra bonus feature. And at the end of it, you have the 8 robot masters, of course, for Mega Man 2, after we get to see all the bosses for Mega Man 2. I love the artwork that was done. I'm not sure when the official art was done for each of these, but it's still really, really cool looking. Love, of course, classic Mega Man games and all the classic robot masters. And then we're going to go back here, and that's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.